My husband stepped over my trembling, fever-riddled body to comfort his mistress, because she claimed to hear a strange noise outside her apartment. He told me to be understanding as my lungs burned. I died that night on our cold bathroom tiles. When I woke up, the calendar had rewound. Searing heat was the only thing I knew in those final moments. It felt as though someone had poured boiling lead into my veins while simultaneously locking my bones inside a freezer. My temperature had spiked to 104.5 degrees, an aggressive, unchecked viral infection that was rapidly attacking my heart. I was curled into a pathetic, shivering ball on the master bathroom floor, my forehead pressed against the freezing porcelain tiles in a desperate attempt to find relief. Every breath I took sounded like crumpled paper. Every beat of my heart felt like a hammer striking a hollow drum. I had begged him. God. I had begged Liam with a desperation that still makes my stomach turn with humiliation. I had gripped the hem of his expensive slacks, the ones I had bought for him with my own hard-earned money, and pleaded with him to call an ambulance, or at least drive me to the emergency room. Instead, he was looking at his phone, his face illuminated by the harsh white light of the screen. The ringtone had pierced the quiet agony of our bedroom. It was Jessica. It was always Jessica. She was his childhood friend, a fragile, perpetually distressed woman who always seemed to encounter a crisis precisely when Liam's attention was focused on me. "Liam, please," I had gasped out, my voice barely a cracked whisper. My chest, I can't breathe. He looked down at me, his expression a chilling mixture of irritation and impatience. There was no panic in his eyes, no concern for the woman he had sworn to protect in sickness and in health just 5 years prior. "Natalie, stop being so dramatic," he sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "You have the flu. People don't die from the flu. Jessica is terrified. She thinks someone is trying to break into her apartment, and the police are taking too long. I need to go over there and make sure she's safe." "She's lying," I sobbed, the effort sending a sharp, stabbing pain through my ribs. "She just wants you there. Liam, I think I'm dying." He roughly pulled his leg away, breaking my weak grip on his trousers. "You're always so jealous, even when you're sick. Just take some Tylenol and go to sleep. I'll be back in an hour or two. Try to be a little more understanding for once." Those were the last words my husband ever spoke to me. Try to be a little more understanding. I listened to the heavy oak door downstairs slam shut, followed by the roar of his car engine fading into the rainy night. I was left entirely alone. The fever triggered an acute episode of viral myocarditis. My heart, overwhelmed and inflamed, simply gave out. I remember the terrifying flutter in my chest, the sudden, suffocating blackness, and then nothing. I died on that bathroom floor, discarded like an inconvenience so my husband could play hero to his mistress. Then I opened my eyes. I wasn't in heaven, nor was I looking at my own lifeless body as some lingering spirit. I was staring up at the familiar, intricate molding of our bedroom ceiling. Sunlight was streaming through the sheer curtains, casting warm, golden shapes across the duvet. I bolted upright, gasping for air. My hands flew to my chest. My heart was beating strong, steady, and normal. My skin wasn't flushed with a deadly fever. It was cool and dry. Panic and confusion warring in my mind, I scrambled for my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up. Tuesday, October 12th. I dropped the phone on the bed, staring at it as if it were a venomous snake. October 12th. I knew that date intimately. It was exactly 3 days before the night I died. 3 days before the fever took hold. My breathing hitched as I looked to my left. Liam was sleeping soundly beside me, his arm thrown carelessly over my pillow. In my previous life, looking at his handsome, relaxed face would have filled me with a soft, affectionate warmth. Now, staring at the man who had effectively left me to die, all I felt was a cold, acidic wave of pure hatred rising in the back of my throat. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet padding softly against the hardwood floor, and walked into the bathroom. The very same bathroom where I had drawn my last pathetic breath. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked healthy. I looked alive. It wasn't a dream. The sheer visceral memory of the pain from the night I died was too real, too agonizingly etched into my mind to be a nightmare. I had been reborn. The universe, in its infinite, twisted mercy, had hit the rewind button and given me 72 hours. 72 hours to change my fate. 72 hours to make sure Liam and his precious Jessica paid for what they did. I washed my face with freezing water, gripping the edges of the marble sink until my knuckles turned white. In my past life, I was Natalie, the understanding wife. Natalie, the financial backer who used her inheritance to fund Liam's tech startup, only to let him take all the credit. Natalie, the naive fool who believed her husband when he said Jessica was just like a sister to him, that Natalie died on these tiles. The woman staring back at me in the mirror was entirely different. She was a ghost who had clawed her way back to the land of the living with one singular purpose. I walked back into the bedroom and watched Liam shift in his sleep, a small, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. I wondered if he was dreaming of her. It didn't matter. I silently picked up my clothes and walked to the guest room to get dressed. He wanted me to be understanding. I was going to be more than understanding. I was going to orchestrate a demolition of his life so complete, so shockingly absolute, that he would be the one begging on his knees. And I would step right over him. The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological compartmentalization. Living in the same house as my murderer, because that is exactly how I viewed Liam, now required every ounce of acting ability I possessed. I made him his artisanal pour-over coffee in the mornings, kissed his cheek before he left for his office, and listened to his daily complaints about his board of directors. All the while, behind my serene smiles, I was dismantling our entire existence. My first order of business had been to contact Oliver Caldwell. Oliver wasn't just a divorce attorney. He was a legal apex predator, known for leaving unfaithful spouses utterly destitute. When I sat in his high-rise office on Wednesday morning and laid out the financial documents proving Liam had been embezzling company funds to pay for Jessica's luxury downtown apartment, Oliver's eyes had gleamed with predatory delight. "He's sloppy, Natalie," Oliver had said, tapping a manicured finger against the bank statements I had quietly duplicated. He used an LLC registered under his cousin's name, but the money trail leads straight back to the joint account you funded. If we time this right, not only do you get your original investment back with interest, but we can have him ousted from his own company for financial misconduct. "I don't just want him ousted, Oliver," I replied, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. "I want him ruined. I want him to have absolutely nothing when I hand him those papers." By Thursday, the pieces were falling into place. I had hired a discreet security firm to install hidden, high-definition cameras in our living room, the hallway, and the master bedroom. I needed undeniable proof of his abandonment and his blatant disregard for my well-being when the fever inevitably struck. I also took preventative measures for my own survival. I wasn't about to tempt fate twice. I booked an elite, on-call private medical concierge service. A doctor and a nurse were put on a retainer, ready to be dispatched to my house the moment I gave the signal. I knew the myocarditis wouldn't be fatal if caught early and treated aggressively with IV antivirals and steroids. I just needed to survive the night. Friday evening arrived, bringing with it the familiar, heavy rain that had masked the sound of Liam's car driving away in my past life. And just like clockwork, at 7 p.m., the first shiver racked my spine. It started as a dull ache in my joints, followed quickly by a wave of unnatural cold that made my teeth chatter. My body was remembering the script. I changed into my pajamas and climbed into bed, pulling the thick duvet up to my chin. My skin grew hot to the touch, and the room began to spin slightly. I checked my smartwatch. My heart rate was already beginning to climb. At 8:30 p.m., Liam walked into the bedroom. He had just finished dinner downstairs, a dinner I supposedly had been too tired to cook, earning a heavy sigh of disappointment from him earlier. He was dressed in a comfortable cashmere sweater, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. "You're still in bed?" he asked, not looking up from his screen. "I have a terrible fever, Liam," I said. leaning into the pillow. I didn't have to fake the weakness in my voice. The illness was setting in rapidly. My chest hurts. It's hard to breathe. He finally glanced over, his brow furrowing in annoyance rather than worry. You probably just caught that bug that's going around the office. Drink some water. Before I could respond, his phone lit up in his hand. The custom ringtone he had set for her, a soft acoustic guitar melody, filled the room. I watched his posture immediately shift. The casual annoyance vanished, replaced by an urgent, hyper-focused attention. He answered it on the first ring, turning his back to me. Hey, Jess. His voice dropped an octave, softening into a tone he hadn't used with me in years. What's wrong? You're crying. I lay there, the heat radiating from my skin, watching the exact sequence of my nightmare replay itself in vivid reality. Whoa, slow down, Liam said, pacing the length of the bedroom. A guy outside your window? Did you call the cops? Okay, I know they're useless. Don't panic. Lock your bedroom door. I'm coming right now. He hung up the phone and immediately went to his closet, pulling out his heavy trench coat. He didn't even look at me as he grabbed his car keys from the dresser. Liam, I croaked out. The fever was peaking, making my vision swim, but my mind was violently clear. Where are you going? I told you, my chest. I need to go to the hospital. He paused at the bedroom door, turning back to look at me. The annoyance had morphed into open resentment. Natalie, don't do this right now. Don't be so selfish. Jess is having a panic attack. Someone is literally terrorizing her. You have a standard flu. Take some Tylenol. I'll be back in an hour or two. He was reciting the lines perfectly. Every syllable struck my ears like a confirmed death sentence. But this time, I wasn't the pathetic wife clinging to his trousers. If you walk out that door tonight, Liam, I said, my voice shockingly steady despite the rattle in my lungs, don't bother coming back. He scoffed, a short, ugly sound of disbelief. Unbelievable. You are entirely unbelievable. Be understanding for once in your life, Natalie. I'll deal with your drama when I get back. He turned and walked out. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just listened. I listened to his footsteps echo down the hall. I listened to the front door open and click shut. I listened to his car engine roar to life and fade into the pouring rain. The hidden cameras had captured every second of his negligence, every word of his cruel dismissal. The moment the house fell silent, I didn't collapse onto the bathroom floor to die. I reached under my pillow, pulled out my phone, and hit the speed dial for the medical concierge. This is Natalie, I gasped, the physical toll of the fever finally breaking through my adrenaline. It's starting. Send the team. 30 minutes later, an IV was safely secured in my arm, pumping life-saving medication and fluids directly into my bloodstream. Dr. Harrison, a discreet, silver-haired physician, monitored my heart rate on a portable ECG machine right next to my bed. The crushing pain in my chest was already beginning to recede. As the medicine took effect, I picked up my phone again and sent a text to Oliver Caldwell. He left. We have it on tape. Execute the asset freeze tomorrow morning. Oliver's reply was instantaneous. Consider it done. Sleep well, Natalie. Tomorrow, we ruin him. I leaned back into my pillows, watching the steady drip of the IV bag. Liam thought he was leaving a nagging, sick wife behind to play the knight in shining armor for his mistress. He had no idea he had just walked straight into a wood chipper. Morning arrived with a crisp, bitter chill that seeped through the frosted window panes of the kitchen. I sat on a velvet bar stool at the Marble Island, holding a steaming mug of Earl Grey tea, my posture perfectly straight. Doctor. Harrison had left an hour prior, packing up his portable ECG and IV bags, declaring me fully stabilized and out of the danger zone. The fatal inflammation that had killed me in my past life was suppressed. I was alive. I was wearing a meticulously tailored navy blue pantsuit, and I was waiting. Footsteps echoed heavily in the front hallway. It was 8:15 a.m. Liam had been gone for over 13 hours. He walked into the kitchen looking exactly like a man who had spent the night reassuring his mistress, instead of caring for his wife. His designer trench coat was wrinkled, his tie was stuffed into his pocket, and the cloying, synthetic scent of Jessica's cheap vanilla perfume clung to his clothes like an invisible fog. He stopped dead in his tracks the second he saw me. He blinked hard, his sleep-deprived eyes trying to process the scene. He had left a woman gasping for air and burning with a severe fever. He came home to a woman who looked ready to dismantle a Fortune 500 company. "You're awake," he stammered, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. "And dressed," I thought. "Last night you said you were dying." "I recovered," I replied simply, taking a slow, measured sip of my tea. My voice was smooth, betraying absolutely none of the vitriol boiling beneath my skin. It's amazing what a little rest and independence can do for a person's health. Liam let out a loud, patronizing sigh, walking over to the espresso machine. "See? I told you it was just a regular flu. You always blow things out of proportion, Natalie. You made me feel terribly guilty for leaving, and look at you, you're absolutely fine. You really need to stop being so melodramatic." I watched his back as he pulled a shot of espresso, marveling at the sheer audacity of the man. In my previous life, his gaslighting would have made me question my own sanity. Now, it just fueled my focus. "How is Jessica?" I asked casually. "Did the police catch the prowler outside her window?" He stiffened slightly, clearly not expecting me to bring her up so calmly. "No. By the time I got there, whoever it was had run off. She was having a massive panic attack, shaking like a leaf. I had to stay on her couch all night just to make sure she felt safe enough to sleep. It was exhausting, honestly." "I can imagine," I murmured. "It must be draining managing two separate lives." Before he could register the weight of my words, his cell phone, resting on the kitchen counter, began to vibrate violently. It was a call from his bank. He picked it up, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion as he answered. "Yes, this is Liam. Wait, what do you mean my accounts are locked? That's impossible. I have over 200,000 in liquid funds in the primary suspicious activity." "What suspicious activity?" His face drained of color. I set my mug down and closed my laptop with a sharp, final click. "What do you mean a court-ordered asset freeze?" Liam practically yelled into the receiver. "Who authorized that? I demand to speak to your manager." He hung up, his hands shaking slightly, and frantically opened his banking app. A series of bright red error messages flashed across his screen. Every single account, the joint checking, his personal savings, the business credit line, was frozen solid. "My cards," he whispered, staring. "You should probably head to the office, Liam," I said, standing up and smoothing out the non-existent wrinkles in my trousers. "Financial irregularities are nothing to scoff at. I imagine the board of directors will want an explanation." He finally looked at me, a flicker of genuine unease crossing his features. But his arrogance was too deeply ingrained to connect the dots. "I have to go sort this mess out. Someone is going to get fired for this clerical error." He grabbed his keys and rushed out the door. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway before picking up my own phone. I dialed Oliver Caldwell's private number. "He's on his way," I said the moment Oliver answered. "Excellent," Oliver's deep, booming voice crackled through the speaker. "Fiona Carmichael and Richard Hayes are already here in the conference room. I presented them with the ledgers you provided. To say they are furious would be a gross understatement. They are out for blood, Natalie. Make sure security is ready," I instructed. "I'm heading over now." The drive to Liam's tech firm, the firm my inheritance had built, was a blur of quiet anticipation. For 5 years, I had played the silent, supportive wife. I had willingly stayed in the shadows, allowing him to play the genius CEO while I managed the unglamorous back-end finances. He had mistaken my silence for stupidity. He had mistaken my loyalty for weakness. By the time I stepped out of my car and walked into the gleaming glass lobby of the corporate headquarters, the trap was fully sprung. The receptionist, who usually greeted me with a polite, dismissive nod, stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. I didn't stop at her desk. I walked straight past the security gates, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished marble, heading directly for the executive floor. It was time to show my husband exactly what happens when you leave a fire to burn out of control. Eventually, it consumes the entire house. Total silence engulfed the executive boardroom as I pushed open the heavy mahogany double doors. The atmosphere inside was suffocatingly tense, thick with the kind of corporate hostility that ends careers. At the head of the long glass table stood Liam, his face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson, a vein throbbing wildly at his temple. He was surrounded by the company's most powerful board members, including Fiona Carmichael, the steely-eyed venture capitalist, and Richard Hayes, the ruthless chief financial officer. Seated comfortably at the opposite end of the table was my attorney, Oliver Caldwell, calmly reviewing a stack of meticulously organized legal files. "Natalie?" Liam snapped, his voice cracking slightly as I walked in. "What are you doing here? And why is this lawyer sitting in my boardroom spouting absolute nonsense about my personal accounts?" I didn't answer him. I walked slowly to the only empty leather chair in the room, right next to Oliver, and took a seat. I folded my hands on the table and looked directly into Liam's panicked eyes. "Liam," Richard Hayes spoke up, his voice cold and sharp as a scalpel. "This isn't about your personal accounts. This is about the $600,000 of company capital that has been systematically siphoned off into an offshore LLC over the past 14 months. An LLC registered to your cousin, which then funneled payments directly to a residential lease downtown. A lease signed by a Miss Jessica." Richard adjusted his glasses, reading from the paper in front of him. "Jessica Rollins." Liam's jaw dropped. The color rushed out of his face so fast I thought he might faint. "That's a mistake. Those were legitimate vendor payments." "Vendor payments for what, Liam?" Fiona Carmichael interrupted, leaning forward. "High-end lingerie? Platinum jewelry? A luxury penthouse overlooking the harbor? We have the receipts. We have the bank transfers. We have everything. You have no right to audit those accounts without my authorization," Liam yelled, slamming his hand on the table, trying desperately to reclaim his dominance. "I am the CEO of this company. I founded this company." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through his shouting like a knife through silk. The room instantly fell quiet. I looked at him with an expression of absolute terrifying calm. "You didn't found anything, Liam. You just put your name on the door." Liam stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. "Natalie, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" "Oliver," I said softly, not breaking eye contact with my husband. Oliver stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Mr. Davies, according to the original articles of incorporation documents your wife wisely insisted upon when she provided the initial $2 million seed funding, Natalie Davies retains a 75% controlling interest in all voting shares in the event of documented financial malfeasance by the acting executive." Oliver tossed a heavy, bound folder onto the center of the table. It slid perfectly across the glass, stopping right in front of Liam. "Furthermore," Oliver continued, his tone dripping with professional satisfaction, "the board held an emergency vote 15 minutes before you arrived. It was unanimous. Effective immediately, you are terminated from your position as CEO. Your company access is revoked. Security is waiting outside to escort you off the premises." "No," Liam whispered, shaking his head frantically. He looked at Fiona, then at Richard. They stared back at him with nothing but disgust. He finally looked back at me, his eyes wide with a sudden, horrifying realization. "Natalie, you can't do this. I'm your husband. We built this together." "We built nothing together," I replied coldly. "I built the foundation, and you used it to buy an apartment for another woman. And speaking of being my husband, I reached into my designer briefcase and pulled out a sleek, white envelope. I slid it across the table toward him. "Those are the divorce papers," I stated. "You'll notice that because of the embezzlement of marital assets and the clauses in our prenuptial agreement regarding infidelity, you are entitled to absolutely nothing. I am taking the house. I am taking the cars. I am taking the company. You have exactly $0 to your name." Liam collapsed into the chair behind him. He looked like a man who had just stepped on a landmine and was waiting for the explosion. "Natalie, please, I'm sorry. Jessica means nothing to me. It was a mistake. Just let me fix this. Please, be understanding." Hearing those words again, be understanding, sent a dark, satisfying thrill straight down my spine. "I am being completely understanding, Liam," I said, standing up and buttoning my blazer. "I understand exactly who you are. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run." "Security!" The heavy doors opened, and two massive security guards stepped into the room. "Please escort Mr. Davies out of my building," I ordered. I didn't wait to watch them grab him by the arms. I didn't stay to listen to his pathetic, sobbing pleas echoing down the executive hallway. I turned my back on the man who had left me to die on cold bathroom tiles, and I walked out of the boardroom, a reborn queen stepping gracefully into her empire. Karma never misses an address, and revenge is best served with an eviction notice and a court order. If you loved witnessing this ultimate underdog reversal and seeing a toxic husband get utterly dismantled, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to share this story with anyone who needs a reminder of their own worth, and subscribe to the channel for more dramatic, real-life storytelling.